When we picture forging ancient empires, we imagine iron, armies clashing, sieges breaking, and steel carving borders. But real power often looks much quieter. In the late 4th century BC, the newly formed Mauryan Empire under a young Chandragupta was incredibly fragile. It was a nascent state, surrounded by rivals, barely holding its ground. Behind the throne, however, sat a brilliant strategist named Chanakya. The pressure on the young king was immense. His generals were restless, pushing for immediate, violent expansion to secure the kingdom's borders before their neighbors could strike first. Chanakya silenced them. He didn't see war as a path to glory. He saw it as a mathematical failure of statecraft. In his treatise, the Arthaśāstra, he laid out the Ṣāḍguṇya, the 6 instruments of foreign policy. This framework categorized everything from peace and war to alliances and double policies. To Chanakya, diplomacy was never about goodwill or holding hands. It was a highly aggressive, deeply calculated, covert extension of warfare. His strict rules of survival began with a simple calculation of strength. If a king was inferior in power, or even exactly equal to his enemy, he was strictly forbidden from launching an unprovoked attack. The logic was brutal and clear. The Arthaśāstra explicitly compares a battle between 2 forces of equal strength to the collision of 2 unbaked clay pots. Both are guaranteed to shatter. And if a small force attacks a larger one, it simply gets absorbed. Therefore, entering into a peace treaty held no moral weight. Peace was simply a calculated holding pattern, a temporary stance meant to give a ruler time to extract wealth, build resources, and wait for the enemy to inevitably weaken. War was strictly a last resort. Taking an army to the field was only justified if it guaranteed a highly profitable outcome, specifically the acquisition of territory and the building of a great empire. By prioritizing these outcomes, a ruler moves away from the unpredictable chaos of the battlefield and toward a system of careful calculation. This system of calculation required a perfect understanding of geography. Ancient India was a deeply fractured landscape, crowded with ambitious kingdoms competing for the exact same resources. Chanakya codified the mandala, or circle of states. Its premise is geographical determinism. Any kingdom sharing your immediate border is your natural enemy, but the kingdom bordering your enemy is automatically your natural ally. You share a mutual threat. This geometric pattern expands outward infinitely across the subcontinent. It creates a complex, predictable web of middle, or madhyama, kings and neutral states, all of which can be manipulated. Mastering this web allows a ruler to paralyze their immediate rivals with the constant threat of a 2-front war. You secure your borders through immense geographical pressure without having to deploy a single soldier. When geographical pressure alone wasn't enough to subdue a rival, Kautilya categorized active conflict into 3 distinct types of warfare. The first is open battle, which relies on brute military force and direct confrontation. The second is treacherous battle, which involves tactics like false retreats and bribing enemy generals. Chanakya considered both to be incredibly costly and carrying far too much risk. The preferred method was the third option, silent battle. This was the Arthaśāstra's ultimate weapon. A covert war fought not on battlefields, but in taverns, royal courts, and inside the minds of the enemy's population. The ancient Indian Secret Service was highly organized to fight this silent war. Operatives acted as agents provocateurs, actively encouraging sedition among the enemy populace, listening in on taverns, and plotting the assassination of rival kings and their ministers. Chanakya viewed a well-placed whisper as a more lethal tool than any cavalry charge, capable of causing a rival kingdom to tear itself apart from the inside. Chanakya and his protege, Chandragupta, applied this cold logic to topple the massive Nanda Empire that previously ruled the region. They avoided a suicidal frontal assault on the heavily fortified capital of Pataliputra. Instead, they adopted a strategy of consuming the empire from the frontiers inward, picking off the weaker outer territories one by one until the center collapsed. Decades later, around 305 BC, a massive new threat emerged on the northwestern frontier. The Greek armies, now under the command of Alexander the Great's successor, Seleucus Nicator, returned to reclaim lost territory. Chandragupta met the Greeks in battle. But rather than committing to a catastrophic, endless war of attrition against a formidable superpower, he utilized the 6 measures of policy to halt the invasion entirely. He struck a masterclass peace treaty. The Greeks yielded vast swaths of what is now Afghanistan to the Mauryans. In exchange, Chandragupta gave Seleucus 500 war elephants and agreed to a matrimonial alliance. Trading 500 elephants was an absolute geopolitical victory. It completely neutralized the superpower threat and permanently secured the empire's borders through the stroke of a pen rather than a bloodbath. The ultimate result of this restraint and calculation was a unified, highly administered empire centered around a thriving and economically stable capital at Pataliputra. The legacy of Kautilya's Arthaśāstra is the historical proof that intellectual foresight is vastly superior to physical bravery or blind militarism. The mastermind who engineered an empire from the shadows knew exactly when to fight, and more importantly, when not to. Power may command armies, but wisdom commands peace. History's greatest rulers are defined just as much by the wars they managed to prevent as the ones they fought. Next time on The Explainer, Episode 20, The Silent Conquest, The 7 Deadly Vices of a King.